something to build on. Surely I'd like to know a little more about the Scriptures. Thank God, and the mystery would certainly pass away. All right. I have a question here this evening, and we're going to pose it to you by giving you a scripture and see if you can, what you can do with it at this late date, while the mist of confusion is passing away. Let's pray for ourselves, saints, that our spirituality will be deepened. If we don't have our spirituality sufficiently, then we're going to say something we probably shouldn't be doing or saying, or go places we shouldn't be going. That's right. We'll find ourselves habitually coming to church late and unnecessarily so. And then we'll find ourselves after we get to church, don't want to sing. And then we don't want to sing and we don't testify either. And sometimes we want to hang around in the fellowship hall or in the nursery. It's just little things that will creep up on us if we don't stir ourselves. The Lord, don't let me be like that. Don't let me be like that. See, we're coasting waiting for the Lord, and I don't think we'll be just coasting waiting on the Lord. I think that we should be involved in the spiritual things. See? I don't think we should be having long conversations during service. And I don't think we should be eating during service and chewing gum or whatever else we'd be chewing, cookies and candy and stuff and all that kind of stuff. That if each one of us was to do it, this would be a sad-looking place. See? Everybody decide they come to church. When we get to it, then of course, maybe quite a few are doing that. Sunday was kind of drab in here, especially on that side. Over on that side where Brother David sits. The group was that Wednesday? Well, I tell you, look, it was really desolate over there for a while. All right, all right. So the whole thought is that we just don't expect God to answer all our prayers when we just coasting and leaning on the wall. They had a relief group during the Depression called the WPA. And they had a song, WPA, WPA, we lean on our shovel and pass the time away. They gave them a little job to do. They would give them relief. There was no work to do, so they would give them jobs sweeping the streets and shoveling out the gutters and things like that. Instead of working, they'd just sing that song from corner to corner. WPA, WPA, we lean on our shovel and pass the time away. This ain't WPA here. We lean on your shovel. All right. Be an example in the congregation. Some come in and they go to the altar and pray, or they get down to their seat and pray. That's better. That's good. Be an example. Others are getting their books out and they don't have to be told to and singing to be an example. There's some that are in here 15, 20 minutes early, not aiming to hit it on the nose and one traffic light make you late. And you come to church and you spend time out there getting a drink and late for service anyhow. So Lord help us that these things, we're going to get graded according as our work shall be. The Bible said so. Let's be examples, especially after the service has started. Let's be in the service to make it worth something. How's that? We get too many people that are leaning on the shovel to pass the time away. 10 minutes till service is out and folks are getting up going to the restroom, man. I believe they could wait. Altar service, confusion, people talking, playing with the baby. When the words are going through, I tell somebody to go back. I say, y'all go in the service. Brother Ron's preaching. What are you doing over in here? We're going to holding personal conferences out in the anterooms when the ministers, the Lord sent His word, we'll all be available to hear it. Now, if you got a bad stomach ache and you're sitting over there, at least you can hear it if you're not talking. But if you're over there talking and holding on some business that could wait until after service, well, then that's not spiritual either. See, God's not going to send any literal natural angels down here. He's not going to send any glorified angels down here to preach to us. So you're going to have to be the ones you see. You have to put up with what you got. Because the Bible said it chose the foolish to preach it. That's right. So we don't feel like that's okay just because that's somebody I know preaching. No, it's the Word of God. We got nothing else to preach. And so we ought to respect that. Don't have side conferences in the fellowship hall during church time. That's right. So that would be something very urgent. And generally it isn't. It might be interesting, but not urgent. Tell me, well, let's read this and see what we can do with it. We're in Mark 13:24. We'll see if we can figure out what that is. The mist of confusion is passing away. Now, it would be good that each one would look at it, so we're not going to really read it out loud. We're just going to ask you some questions about it. Since we each have the equipment of the soldiers, we don't let the babies or the children, when we get ready to go to prayer, see what your children are doing. And if they're situated okay, then it's time for prayer. And open one eye now and then and see what they're doing. Don't let children get us in trouble. That's right. Now these children, some of these children are coming of age where they began to cause trouble. They get into what they call terrible twos. As far as the saints are concerned, by the time they get out of their twos, they straighten out. We don't let our children rule us. Right? Now, as you correct your child, if you're correcting your child, we can put up with that, the disturbance. We've got some chairs in the back, and if your child, we have some coming of age, that age, you can sit back there in the back with your child. Don't have them worry and make all that noise in the saints' ears. Get in the back like the rest of the mothers until you can get them under, and don't take forever. We still got some little paint stirrers around here to stir up obedience. That's right. It's time to stand. The babies aren't that heavy. You stand and carry them all around the house. Now it's time to stand. Stand up with the baby. And if you get tired, sit down. The whole thing is the enemy wants to find some way to make things slack with us. Make us slack. We don't trip and backslide over these babies either, or lose any altitude because of them. All right. Now I see people standing to sit down during service. Now if you can stand around after service, then you all stand up during the prayer time. If you're now I got mercy on you. I know you're afflicted. I've had to sit down some myself in the past year or so, and I know what can happen. But at the same time, I'm pressing to get up and be with the saints. I don't want to be no bad example. Even I don't think I can do advantage of my sickness a little. I'm leave it on me longer, since I'm using it so well. So let us be mindful that God He's on our case. He's watching us. He's going to grade us. And what's in the heart, zeal. If you have zeal in your heart, it'll show. It'll show. Be careful. Let your spirituality rule. Those babies are not going to get you to heaven. If anything they do, they'll hinder you if you don't watch out. So don't defer to them. Don't let them hold you down. Play with them and let your children play with you. See, if you hand your baby to somebody and they're playing with them during service, take a baby back. Take your baby back. You don't want to hinder you and don't hinder anybody else with it. So maybe people don't know how to pay attention to the service and sing and hold the baby, then give it back to the mama. Mama ought to know how. Somebody's got your baby and the baby's making too much noise. Maybe you don't know how to quiet them. Mama's been practicing. Give it back to the mama. All right? And we love babies. But if you can't handle them, give them somebody who can. All right. But in those days after that tribulation, the sun shall be darkened, and the moon shall not give the light, and the stars of heaven shall fall, and the powers that are in heaven shall be shaken. And then shall the Son of Man, they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory. Then he shall send his angels, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from the uttermost parts of the earth to the uttermost part of heaven. Now learn the parable of the fig tree. When her branch is yet tender and putteth forth leaves, you know that summer is near. So in like manner, when you shall see these things come to pass, know that it is nigh, even at the doors. Nigh. That means near, right? Verily I say unto you that this generation shall not pass till all these things be done. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my word shall not pass away. All right. What are we talking about here? It's reported in three of the Gospels anyway. I'll read it for you in Matthew 29 because for clarity, since it's given 3 times, we'll read it and use whichever version presents the best clarification for us. In Matthew 24:29, immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of heaven shall be shaken. Then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the 4 winds, from one end of heaven to the other. All right? We read in Mark. All right, let's see what Luke has to say in Luke 21. Now we need to know these things, at least have a hint of what they are, or else we're going to get mixed up with the millennials. (21:25). There shall be signs in the sun, and in the moon, and in the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations, with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring, men's hearts failing them for fear and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth. For the powers of heaven shall be shaken. And they shall see the Son of Man coming in the cloud with power and great glory. When these things begin to come to pass, then look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. We're going to read one more in, let me see, Joel, I believe what? Daniel, Hosea, and Joel. Or 2:28 of Joel. And it shall come to pass afterward that I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh. Your sons and daughters shall prophesy, your old men shall dream dreams, and your young men shall see visions. And upon the servants and upon the handmaids in those days I will pour out of my spirit. And I will show wonders in heaven and in the earth, blood and fire, pillars of smoke. The sun shall be turned into darkness, and the moon into blood, before the great and notable, terrible day of the Lord come. And it shall come to pass that whoever shall call on the name of the Lord shall be delivered. For in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem shall be deliverance, as the Lord hath said, in the remnant whom the Lord shall call. Sun turned to darkness, the moon into blood, before the great and terrible day of the Lord come. Someone had read that, one of the church members, been in church a long time, and called me on the phone, long distance. The astronauts landed on the moon, and she was really scared and troubled and perplexed because she had read that the moon was blood. How can the astronauts land? Have they proved that the scripture is wrong? Well, let's pay attention. It let us know she wasn't paying attention or didn't know the truth for some reason or other. We should not be throwing if they land on the moon again. That ain't got nothing to do with what we're talking about. That don't have one thing to do with what we're talking about. You're very, very remotely, maybe there's a kindred. Is this interesting at all? Are you concerned about these scriptures? Or is this way beyond you? Who's ready to start explaining this to me? And to the rest of us? We have out of the mouth of 3 or 4 witnesses. The Bible said 2 or 3, and I think we read about 4, about the moon going out and turning to blood and all that business, and stars falling and all that business. What does it mean? See, those that skip Bible study or don't take notes in Bible study, I wonder how many still have their notebooks. You have any notebooks tonight? Oh, okay. Are you teenagers get it too, because you're not going to have 40 years to learn like we have. That's right. You adolescents, you're not going to have no 40 years learning doctrines. Things are going to be start maybe quickening even before you know it. And if you don't know the doctrines, you'll get confused. It's like you can't read a road map and you're in the midst of New York and don't know where you are. Going across the Verrazano Bridge. And you don't know what to do when you get off. Left or right? Am I going the right direction? And this can get confusing. Especially when people are challenging the truth. When people are challenging you and they sound like they really confident in what they're talking about, you can get kind of, throw your hands up. Eesh. Now, you may not catch it 100% what it is, but you have an idea of what they're talking about. All right, anybody like to try that? Let's see. We haven't covered it. We have covered it. But because we didn't use the notebooks, then we probably have forgotten. If we write it down, we're going to remember it better. You write it down in your own manner so you understand it when you go back through your notes. And some of these evenings, you ought to stay home and run through your notebook and study your lessons. You would never finish high school if you didn't do your lessons any better than some of us do our Bible study. We'd still be in high school. Matter of fact, we'd have forgotten what we learned last semester. Some people think that's all we do is study the prophecy. Yeah, they really do. They think that's what we study. They say, you blessed, you should get to study the prophecy. Yes, ma'am. Yes, in Joel. Yeah. When he spake well, part of it was when he spake of pouring out his Spirit on all flesh. Of course, he's talking about then. Yes, he surely was. What any other contributions? Little bits and pieces. Maybe you remember just a phrase or something. Yes. All right. You're in the 31st verse of Joel. Sun shall be turned to darkness and moon into blood. Joel covers quite a bit of time in this short little proclamation that he made, but he given the essence to the New Testament's history before. It was prophecy at that time. The sun shall turn to darkness and moon into blood before the great and terrible day of the Lord come. Now the great and terrible day, of course, speaking of the judgment, that day shall not come till there come a falling away first, that Paul said and Joel said. There are going to be signs and wonders in heaven above and earth below before that great and terrible day of the Lord come. And we're waiting. People are taking these scriptures plus the revelation and conjuring up some great mysterious foolishness. Symbol book out, you find out that that's very handy, because on that cover, symbols of revelation and what? Yeah, that one. Symbols, the keys to the revelation and prophecy. And we've taken these symbols, as long as they are symbols, we can take them from anywhere in the Bible, but most of them come from those chiefly books. Now, we'll recognize symbolic language when we see it by observing its context. There's some things that we're saying here in these 3 or 4 instances that can't be literally true. They can't be literally. In the first place, we have the sun and the stars falling upon the earth, and then after that we're having preaching and the gathering of the people. And let me know it can't be literal, because once a star falls on the earth, that's it. If you know what a star is. The smallest star around in our vicinity is what? The sun. And it can't fall on the earth and still have preaching going on. Preaching will cease quick before it gets here. All right, so then we must recognize it must be prophetic, since it cannot be literal. We have to recognize what the tribulation was. The sun shall be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light. Has that happened? John said these things must shortly come to pass. And we're still a short distance from John when we consider the eternity. Those days after that tribulation, the sun shall be darkened, the moon shall not give her light, and the stars of heaven shall fall, and the powers that are in heaven shall be shaken. What powers in heaven can be shaken? The powers in heaven? What powers are in heaven? What heaven are we talking about? Yeah. If you're one of them literalists, right away you're going to think about up in glory, going to be shaking up the angels and going on. That's about the power. Jehovah and the angels are the powers of heaven, and literally speaking. But then you're not talking about shaking up the angels, because they don't need shaking. So we must be talking about another heaven. How many heavens do we have, saints? All right, at least 3. All right. The sun shall be darkened, the moon shall not give her light, the stars of heaven shall fall, and the powers that are in heaven shall be shaken. Well, once the sun and the moon fall, then what powers are left? And they shall see the Son of Man coming with clouds in great power and glory. Coming where? And then shall he send his angels, and they shall gather together the elect from the 4 winds. Now the stars, you just can't come up with this literally, because the stars of heaven are going to fall, and we're assuming that they're speaking in relation to the earth, because the gospel is written on the earth and for the earth. And they're above us, and if they fall to the earth, as we find in Revelation, they fell to the earth, then that's after the moon decided not to shine, and the sun is darkened. All right. So I believe we already recognize the mystery of the saying, although I just emphasize it a little bit, because we're going to try to get them out of the mystery. Because when the 7th trump shall begin to sound, the mystery should be finished, and therefore we should not be in the darkness concerning. If I would take you to Revelation the 6th chapter, you think that might help? Let's go to Revelation 6th chapter and take a look and see if it get it in a setting that we're more accustomed to finding the prophecies. I beheld when he opened the 6th seal, and the seal is just a mystery cover, that's all. Just a mystery cover, a cover to keep the mystery mysterious. When he had opened the 6th seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. The sun went out, and the moon turned to blood. She refused to shine. And the moon became as blood, and the stars of heaven fell unto the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs. And again, it cannot be literal. Now remember that. Even the least of us all realize that the stars, how many stars are up there? Plenty of them. Then you talk about more than one. No, it didn't happen that way, but people just say, well, God can do anything. Well, he can do anything that he's not limited by the nature he created. Now we have to change nature to do it. Lo, there was a great earthquake, All right, we're not ready for that yet. Although we'll give you an inkling. We don't want to go through all this and just and pass over you. We want you to get something out of it. But we realize here, I think we do a better job here in the 6th chapter. Right? We've been over that plenty of times. The stars of heaven fell unto earth. What are the stars of heaven that fell to the earth, Sister Angie? Pardon?
I think it's...
Oh, let me have conference first. Okay, go ahead.
I was right. I thought you were right.
Oh, I didn't see nobody was wrong.
I believe it was ministry.
How did they fall to earth?
Well, they fell. They
From where?
compromised.
From where?
From where?
Yeah.
Hospital to hospital.
Fell from where?
Fell from... They fell from the truth.
No, what did it say they fell from? Well, we're reading in the gospel, you know. Let me see. Let me go back and see what it says they fell from. Luke 21. We forgot. I mean, yeah, well, yeah, but what did the scripture say they fell from? So when you run across it again, you'll know. Pardon? They fell from, you give me words for it, come on. They fell from what? You said exalted position. What's that? Pardon? Heaven. What heaven? In Revelation 6:12, I beheld when they had opened the 6th seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. 13th verse, and the stars of heaven fell unto the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs. They fell to earth. Now, what's earth? What's wrong with falling to earth except that? No, it's just Kevin.
They didn't accept truth until they walked out with God. They became earthly. They were not
Yeah, they become like other folks.
right because they wouldn't continue on like they wouldn't accept the truth and came forth.
All right. They fell into an earthly condition and position. All right. Now, when we're reading here in Revelation and we're reading in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, Christ is telling us in advance what John will be telling us later on. Now, who told John about these things? Who told John? Who told John? Who gave him the revelation? No, don't say God. Christ, yes. If you say God, then we don't know what you're talking about. For sure. The Bible says the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave unto him. So it makes a difference in this situation. Christ is God, but that's confusing when you're speaking of the Father and the Son and you say God. So he says, the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave unto him, to show unto his servants the things which must shortly come to pass. He sent and signified it by his angel unto his servant John. All right, so God, if we can identify one, then we'll know who God is. If we said Jehovah gave it to God, then of course in that case God would be Christ. But when we say that the revelation of Christ, which God gave unto him, we're talking about the Father. The Almighty God, the real Almighty God. All right, now, let's see. I hope we ain't getting lost here. Well, we would like to identify some of these symbols so you can at least know that these are symbolic. Don't believe that there's going to be a time when these things will happen literally, like many of the millennialists and dispensationals to believe that this thing not going to happen literally. When it comes time for the end of the world, Peter told us literally what was going to happen to the stars, that they're going to pass away. He said they're going to all fall down here. So they're going to pass away. What a great noise. All right, now we're in Luke 25. And there shall be signs in the sun, and in the moon, and in the stars, signs, and upon the earth distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring. The sea and the waves roaring. We're speaking symbolically. The sea and the waves always roar, especially when them hurricanes come through, in a natural sense. But false religion came out of the sea, men's hearts filling them for fear, and looking after those things which are coming upon the earth. Man is preparing this fear, and he's causing it himself by withdrawing from the Word of God. That's how things will get turned the devil loose. When the Word of God is bound, then the devil's loose. And when the Word of God is loose, then the devil's bound. And the more the Word is loose, the more the devil's bound, and the more the devil's loose, the more the Word is bound. You see, what we're doing now in our legislatures and courthouses is binding the Word of God. That's why the children are getting worse and worse. Because the Word of God is bound. The Word of God, they said, beat them with a rod, and they'll say they're sold from hell. People don't want to beat with a rod. They're binding the Word of God. Spoil the rod and spoil the child is a saying that was derived from that saying there. And it's true. It's a true proverb. But we're binding the Word of God. I find out that Disneyland is giving those employees down there that work for them, giving their homosexual mates wife privileges if it's a man and husband privileges if it's a woman. That's another reason not to go to Disneyland. Yeah, they start doing that stuff, then the other people get the same idea. Before you know it, they'll be striking for that privilege. And before you know it, you'll have men, women, men, wives. Women ain't got nobody to marry because men marry men. Well, shame on you. Go to the door, open the door, and here comes a man with the door, with a bonnet and an apron on. Is Mrs. home? I'm she. You ain't either. You're a counterfeit. But anyhow, we're binding the Word by man's laws. And man's laws are going above God's laws. And the more God's law is bound, the more disorder we're going to have. And the things come upon the earth, men's hearts failing them for the fear. David said, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. But when the rod and the staff is gone, shame on us. And we know the rod is that which we measure and enforce right behavior. All right, there shall be signs in the sun. What's the last sign that he told us to be? Christ in the 24th chapter gave us the signs in the sun. Let's go in the 24th chapter of Matthew and see if we can find the signs. All right, whatsoever the carcasses, there the eagles be gathered together, and we have that in the 19th chapter of Revelation, of the spirits flying in the midst of heaven. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened. And of course we're dealing with when the truth at that time in the 6th seal what we were reading was revealed unto the Reformation brethren, and the majority of the religious world went into darkness because, as Sister already mentioned, they received not the truth that was available to them, so they went into darkness. That's when the moon and the sun went out. If you don't accept truth, then God remove it. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, the moon shall not give her light, the stars of the apostate ministers fall from their heavenly position, and the powers of heaven shall be shaken, and the sun, and then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. The sign. It didn't say the man. Some other place says man, but it says the sign. All right. Pardon? Well, just right here. We're going to find and show it to you. It tells you what's going to be the preview of his coming. That's the sign. That was the preview of his coming. He said, this gospel shall be preached in all the world for a witness. That's the last sign. And then shall the end come. When you see the broad preaching and the wide preaching of the Word of God, that's the last sign. All right. Now here's the signs. Let me read them to you. Let's start at the 3rd verse. As he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, tell us, when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign? See? They ask him about the sign. They want to know earlier. How shall they know its time? So what he's telling them, what he's here is giving us signs. And he said, then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man. Now what is the sign? Well, we'll read down through here. He said, take heed that no man deceive you. One of the first signs is the mass deception. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. That's a sign. The sign shall appear in heaven, in the heavenly place, in the glory. This is the sign. And many believe it. And you shall hear wars and rumors of wars. Not just plain wars. Men always fought wars, but we're speaking of the abundance, like we've been having lately. Siege, be not troubled. For all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. Here's another sign. Nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There shall be famines. Sign. Where are the signs now? You writing them down? It's not a very big mysterious thing because it's revealed right here what the signs are. Famines, pestilences, earthquakes in divers places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. This is heading up toward the birth of the baby. And that is the coming of God. Then they shall deliver you up to be afflicted. It's lining up like that right now. Beat your children, they can put you in jail if they catch you. They've been calling police on folks now if they can catch them. They're putting the pressure on. Especially they're starting out with the children. And the Bible said children shall betray their parents, and that's a sign. They tell on you. We wondered how in the world the children could do that. Now we come to the place where we're beginning to see how these children can betray their parents. Telling what's going on in the home, get them in trouble for keeping the scriptures. The beginning of sorrows, here's another sign, they deliver you up to be afflicted, jail you, and shall kill you. You shall be hated of all nations. As you hold your standard and the world gets farther away from Christ, the more you will be hated. They don't like you now. You tell the sister today, don't worry about it. Don't worry about the parent. Don't worry about it because it's a sign. The closer you live to God, or if they can identify that you don't agree with them, they're going to hate you and kill you. And many shall be offended and shall betray one another and shall hate one another. And many false prophets shall rise, a further signal, and shall deceive many. And because iniquity will abound, and surely rebellion is abounding. More than ever, people don't want to go to church. It's awful, when you see people so hardened to the gospel that they're out cutting the grass, running them big mowers on Sunday, and not having garage sales on Sunday. There was a time saints had more fear than that. Even the sinner had more fear than do those things. You go supermarket shopping. You can go there if you want to. You can go out and get your car fixed just about. And I'm glad for the emergency services, but shame on those who are doing it routinely. They let the works that were of value go on the Sabbath, but we're messing up our one rest day a week. And who that endure to the end shall be saved. Now, because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. And that is what's happening. That's what I'm trying to talk about, saying we can let our love wax cold right in here, coast right into that. Let our love wax cold, stay home for whatever reason. There's no reason to stay home. If you got somebody to watch your sick children, come to church. You got somebody to watch your sick mother, sick sister, and then come to church. That's important. spending some camping out, almost staying home, ain't coming home back for the duration, that's not of God. It's not spiritual. You ought not be doing that. Why? Because you let yourself slack. In other words, what you're saying is I can keep myself, and whether I go or whether I can't. The Word of God says that's not so. The Word of God says that's not so, and we ought to obey God rather than man. And we ought to believe God. He said the love of many going to wax cold because of the cold things we're doing, because we're letting up off of the imperativeness of the Word. We just don't believe it. But they that endure to the end, in spite of the waxing cold, somebody's going to hold out. He that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. Now here's the last sign. And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. 31st verse gives us a reaffirmation of that. And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, his ministers with a great sound of a trumpet. This sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect, as they call them out of the sects and the creeds again. This gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness, and his angel with a great sound of a trumpet. Is singular. Many angels, but one trumpet. And which trumpet would it be at the close of time? It would be the seventh trumpet message. And they, through the message, it's not a literal trumpet. It's the gospel message. They shall gather together his elect. You can't gather together elect with a literal trumpet. But it means the same thing it means in Revelation. A message. A warning. They got instructions, directions. This gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness, and in all nations, and then shall the end come. But before this takes place, you got your stars falling, you got your sun being shut off, you got the moon won't give you light, and you got all these signs that are appearing. And it's spiritual and it's not literal, so don't worry about it. Just stay in tune with God and stay humble. Stay humble so you can hear the word. He shall send his angels with a great sound of trumpet. Many angels, but they're all going to blow the same message, and that's the gospel message. From one end of heaven to the other. He said, and the gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness, one end of heaven to the other, unto all nations, and then shall the end come. Well, what's the last sign in the heavens? What's the last sign? Gospel being preached. All right, now what did the brother ask him? Tell us, when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? What is the sign of the end of the world? All right. If you only had to give one sign, it would be the gospel being preached to all the world. And then shall the end come. What did you say, Sister Angie? What did you have?
Does that mean that the truth is going to be preached to the whole world?
Yes. Yes.
People are able to go into some of these communist countries now and pass out Bibles, but it means that the true gospel.
Well, if we're going to consider who the scriptures say going to preach it, who's going to preach it? You see, there's plenty of false angels around. That's what he told us. Because false prophets shall abound. We ain't talking about them, folks. Nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. False prophets shall rise and shall deceive many. Yeah, they're going to be out there busy too. Probably in all the world. There you go. Wherever the gospel is preached, you're going to find some falseness being preached too. And they've outnumbered the truth for a long time. All right, in the 24th verse, we have warning again, at least 3 times in this chapter. For there shall arise false Christs, false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch, if it were possible, it shall deceive the very elect. But what's to keep them from deceiving the very elect? Except the very elect have a seal in the forehead. The Bible said there was a seal in the forehead. What was the seal indicate? Knowledge. In the forehead. Knowledge. So if someone come up and teaching you some wrong things, well, you don't want to believe them. It's imperative, it's necessary that we have enough of the doctrine that we don't be led astray by these folks and get confused. Which rider of the horse was confusing people? Pardon? Which one? Which one confused people? Which one specialized in it? Pardon? I heard someone red, right, black, blue. Yeah, it was the one. It was a red horse rider. How did he do it? Yeah, he had a false doctrine. That's right. He had a sword. He had a great sword, and he confused the people. And what happened to him? What happened to him when they got confused? You know what happened when they got confused? You know what happened when they got confused, saints? Yeah. Well, they didn't know how to stand. You'd be like a saints in a Roman Catholic Church. We don't know when to stand, how to stand in there. We be watching folks around by us. Get down when they get down. Get up when they get up. Get down. I've heard people say they went to Catholic Church. So they get confused in there. They don't know all them bends and bows and stuff. And we don't either. Don't want to. All right, Sister Kevin.
No, that is not the same, God coming in glory as in Mark 13, 24, that's the same thing.
Probably so.
So that was,
All right, 13, 24. But the days after that tribulation, the sun shall be darkened, the moon shall not give a light, and the stars of heaven shall fall, and the powers that are in heaven shall be shaken. Then shall they see the Son of Man coming in the clouds. He hasn't given the same sequence. I mean, he's given the same sequence, but he's not given the same detail. See, in between there was a sign. According to Matthew, there was a sign. Yeah, it's the same thing. It's the same thing, but they just don't have all the steps in there. See, Christ didn't come twice. The stars of heaven shall fall. Then shall they see the Son of Man. In other words, before that, in Matthew, they shall see the sign of Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory. Then he shall see. See? That's why they call them synoptic gospels, and because they all give a different version of the same thing. Yeah, Son of Man is coming. I think I would get maybe a little bit lost here in Mark if it wasn't for Matthew. See? No, the same thing. He's just shortened it. You shall see the Son of Man coming. And it's true, but there's some things intervening there. And I'm sure that Matthew didn't give all of what Christ said. There's probably more to that. And then it's said so short that it involves so much. We're taking us from the sixth seal right out to the end of time. We're speaking of the Great Tribulation. So it's really short. And he took us from morning time, it was before the morning time, to the close of the Mosaic dispensation. When Christ was nailed on the cross, died on the cross, and the Mosaic dispensation ended. As Christ said, the time is coming, and now is. The Christ was coming, the time was coming when he would be nailed to the cross, and that would definitely seal. But it was already in effect for those who were under Christ's teaching. The woman at the well, for instance, she was under Christ's teaching, and so what he was telling her was true already, but the rest of them would get it at his death. He closed the veil of the temple, is when it ripped in two. So he took us from there and the destruction, 80, 70 of the temple, and he brought us on up. He gave them signs, they asked for the signs, and he was giving the signs of destruction. When you see Jerusalem compassed about with armies, that's a sign. And sure enough, those that took heed to the sign escaped, and those who didn't perish for the most part. So he gave them signs to escape the destruction they were asking about. And he's given us signs also. If they kept their sign and saved themselves, well then of course we're to observe the signs in the same way. There ain't no time to be backsliding, getting smart and getting overconfident and sleepy. Not when Christ said this is the signs. When you see the homosexuals marching down the street, then you know the time is nigh. That's right. When you see the government's forbidding to spank and train your children, then you know anarchy's nigh. You notice what those children are doing in the schools? You know how vicious they are in there? How about if they don't mind a week go by and the child ain't whipped the teacher, beat the teacher, shot one or something like that, shoot one another? School's terrible, and they say, don't beat them. Don't beat them. Why are the teachers beating our children? That's an article I was reading. And it was mad because a teacher beat a child one time. No, tribulation. Why are teachers hitting our kids? In many states, teachers have a right to paddle our kids. They claim it's discipline, but many moms it seem more like child abuse. There's a group called, let me see, People Opposed to Paddling Students, called POPS, POPS. Hitting children with a board is child abuse. I'm not about to say beat them with a rod, you ain't gonna kill them. Now, what are we gonna do? They're reaping what they're sowing, right? Yeah, they're reaping it. That teacher come up and kick him in the belly, and the child come up and kick the teacher in the belly. Put poison in their coffee. And all these things happen. Calling the principal, poor principal, his life's threatened. So he got to get in the middle. So he let him drink his coffee before he go down there. And hope the thing dissolve itself. You're going to walk in there. But they're reaping what they sow. It's some of the things that are coming up on the earth, and it's going to get worse. And probably won't get no better. But let the gospel be preached, and let the devil rage, and let's see what's going to happen. Signs in the sun and the moon. That's the doctrine. The light. See these signs in the light that's being preached. The last sign is what? That's right. The gospel be preached in all the world for a witness. All right, now you want to see some signs. Take heed, no man deceive you. When you therefore shall see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. Whosoever readeth, let him understand. Then let him which is in Judea flee to the mountains. Why? Because you've got your sign out there. God already gave you the sign. He's been dead 30 some years, but he gave us a sign to watch for. When you see Jerusalem encompassed about with armies, or the abomination that maketh desolation. That was the Roman army, spoken of by Daniel the prophet. Now, what is the abomination maketh desolation? Well, it just tells us plainly in the other Gospels. That's why we have to read them together. That is the Roman army. When you see, okay, who wants to find it for me? It's in these same chapters that we already gave you. Luke 21, Mark 13, and Matthew 24. If you look in those, you'll find out that they say, when you see Jerusalem compassed about with armies, it's the army that makes Jerusalem desolate. Pardon? No, literal, because they're talking about the literal Jerusalem. See, they were asking about the actual, they were actually at the temple, if you remember. All right, Sister Mary? Luke 21, 20. I read it.
When you shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is not.
All right, see, Matthew said the abomination of maketh desolation, abomination of desolation. But Luke says, when you see the armies, what do they say? If you see armies, what?
When you shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is not.
You know what desolation is? It means the ruin of it. The emptying out of whatever is useful. It says, but Daniel, Matthew says, the abomination of desolation. Spoken of by Daniel the prophet. Now, be one of the others say the abomination that maketh desolation. That's what she was reading. The armies that make a desolation. All right. So the abomination of desolation, it's the Roman armies. That's the one that desolated the place. They put a siege about it and starved them out for a good while. And said if it hadn't been for the shortening of time, there had been no flesh saved. Now you're taking your notes because you're going to really study this, and if you do it often enough, your questions will come clear, and then when you get your questions answered, then you'll have a handle on this portion that you won't be talking about the man of sin and all that foolishness. And he's so cunning and he's so clever, and he's going to fool the people, and they're going to elect him leader, and then he's going to mess them up in 1,000 years and all that kind of foolishness. We don't want to hear that because it's not true. We know what the sun is, we know what the moon is, and we know that they asked him about signs of coming events, and he gave them signs to watch for concerning coming events, and it's just that mysterious. Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and the disciples came to him for to show him the buildings of the temple. Jesus said unto him, See ye not all these things? See these things? What all were they looking at? Well, they were looking at the temple, looking at the walls, and looking at the brazen altar, and the wash pots out there, and whatever they was. He said, "You look at all these things. This stuff's going to be tore out of you. You are holy, very high and sacred, and you know God is really with it. But God's going to give you back up." He said, "Your house is left to you desolate." When they couldn't desolate the temple until Christ left it desolate. When he moved back off of it, then the Roman armies were able to destroy it, the city. "Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, they killeth the prophets," as Christ cried over the city in anticipation of what was going to happen to it. "How oft I have gathered you under my wings," says a hen doth her chickens, but ye would not. Now your house is left to you desolate. There shall be not left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, his disciples came to him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be? 1, and 2, what shall be the sign of thy coming? And 3, what shall be the sign of the end of the world? And as we go through this 24th chapter, sometime he gets them in reverse order, or he goes through them and then starts over. And so you have to discern which event he's giving us a sign of. When he said, "Pray ye that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day," he's not talking about he's talking about the destruction of Jerusalem there. He's not talking about the end of the world. But they're asking about that. Why didn't they want the flight to be in the winter? Well, because it's going to be cold. And it got cold in those parts. Neither on the Sabbath day. Why? Because they were limited in how far they could travel. And if you remember by studying who was it that did that? Why couldn't they travel on the Sabbath day for one reason? What's the hindrance? The gates was locked, yeah. The law was against it. And then, who said shut the gates? You remember? Ezra. Told them fellows outside that gate, he looked over the wall and saw them down, and he said, "If you lay in here again, I'm going to lay hands on you. Get away from here." And so they would be hindered at the gates shut on the Sabbath, on the Sabbath. And then there was those folks that hindered Christ from doing his works on the Sabbath. A bunch of them still around, trying to be holy. Don't travel. There was a Sabbath day journey. They got to travel farther than that. When you see them Amish camped out there, you want to get past them. And I'm going to tell you, they wouldn't camp so far away. They just camped far back. You couldn't throw rocks and hit them, but they wouldn't camp way out to where you'd be secure inside that ring of soldiers. But he wouldn't do it. Now, the 24th chapter in particular is giving the signs that they asked for. They wanted to know. Now, what brought this about was they were trying to impress Christ on the beauty of the temple. So he went out and he departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him to show him the buildings of the temple. There had been some extra buildings put in. Who put it up? Herod. Herod had some extra buildings put in when Christ come. I don't know. It seemed like Christ had seen it before, but they wanted him to see something. And so they said, "Come there, let me show you something." And he said, "Okay, don't marvel at this temple, and don't get your heart set on it. Because of the wickedness of the people and the hard-headedness that they have, this thing is going to be wiped out." But yet it was providential anyway, because Christ wasn't going to let the natural temple be equal to the spiritual temple that he was going to build. "Well, I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down." Well, that was no doubt very startling to those disciples who were glorying in the building. And they were probably meditating and turning that around in their head. What in the world does that mean? And as he said upon, you know how they complained when Stephen said something about the temple and the laws of Moses and whatnot? Well, they charged him with it. They stoned him to death for it. Now here Jesus said that to his own disciples. Well, it had an effect on them. But Jesus says it was going to happen nevertheless. He sat up on the Mount of Olives, and the disciples came to him privately, saying, tell us, what do you mean by that? What is this kind of thing going to be? And what shall be the sign of your coming and the end of the world? Take heed that no man deceive you. The only way to defend against deception is to know truth. Right? How can you recognize bad money if you've never seen any good money? You'd be taking them for counterfeit dollars and rejoicing because they told you they was dollars. People tell you it's truth and you don't know the difference. There's people out there in this world out there just rejoicing and going on. And when they get to these chapters and these scriptures here, they just back off and say, well, honey, we don't know, but the Bible said so. And they're going to be doing this, and blood's going to be up to the horses' bridles. Yeah, and these helicopters are going to come down shooting up everybody. Yes, and armies with teeth like swords, hair like women. Yeah. Oh, I don't want to be around in those days. And, I'll be glad I'll be in the first resurrection. They just get confused. So we don't need it to be that way. Let me see, what are we going to do here? A great sound of a trumpet, and he shall gather his elect together from the four corners. Great earthquake. We know about the earthquakes. And the earthquake of the seventh seal if it started as bad as it started. Looked like a good thing quaking a little bit, and the folks start quaking each other. You know what happened? Why they were able to take the city, AD 70, when Jerusalem was compassed about, because they were burning, they were fighting inside the wall for leadership, for preeminence. The Jews were fighting one another inside while the armies were gathering outside. Instead of taking heed to Christ's warning, they were inside fighting for leadership. And they were setting one another's warehouses on fire, and they burned up the corn, and later on they was eating shoe leather and everything, and the babies and whatnot, trying to stay alive. Because their intention wasn't to what Christ had told them, but rather it was on something else they were doing. So they burned up their corn, burned up their reserve supplies, and every city, walled city, had a granary in it. It had a supply in there. It had reserve water inside. That's what the walls are for. They know they couldn't go out and didn't want to go out. They put the walls up to keep the enemy from coming in. And so they began to fight one another. And so the church today is having a problem trying to get unified against the world because we're pressing for preeminence and burning each other down. Now I'm talking about those folks that have no truth that's not doing anything, but them wild folks out there. But I didn't say they were saints as a whole, but until God reject them. All right, what did you say, brother? What did you say? Verse 49 of the 24th chapter? 49? Yeah, oh yeah, that sounds like it. Now, evil servant shall say in his heart, my Lord delayeth his coming, began to smite his fellow servants, eat and drink with the drunken dwellers. Same spirit, the Lord shall come in a day he looked not for him. But there was the Roman armies was outside, ready to do him in. And they were in there fighting one another, and they needed each other. And all that food, I'm sure they regretted it, to see the ashes of it, and they were in there hungry. Couldn't get out to get any food, and they weren't about to let them out. That's what the siege was about. Cost too many men to try to breach the walls of those cities so they'd starve them out. Just have to be patiently sit outside and let them eat up their food, and sometime a year or so when they finally give up. It happened in the Old Testament, don't you remember? The Syrian camped outside the walls. We sing that song, the Syrian camp at midnight. They were under siege because the armies were trying, as it were, to starve them out. And this was the case with the Romans. He said if those days hadn't been short, because the Roman army, they were there because they could send out for supplies and resupply. While the folks inside were starving, running out of goods, the armies outside could send back and wherever else and get some resupplies. All right. Let's go over here to the 6th chapter of the Revelation and look at it in a little more. You remember that if we come down through there now in the what happened was we were looking at someone opening 7 seals in the 5th chapter. And finally said, "Fear not, the Lion of the tribe of Judah has prevailed to open the 7th seal, to open the seals. And loose the 7 seals thereof." All right, so he opened the seal, the first seal, and he saw the white horse. The 2nd seal in the 3rd verse, he saw come and see, and there went out another horse that was red. And verse 5, when it opened the 3rd seal, I saw a beast come and see, and I held, and behold, a little black horse. And he was sitting on him, had a pair of balance in his hand. And then the 4th seal, and we were aware that this was taking us down through the Roman Catholic and Protestant history of the 4th seal. They come and see, and behold, I saw a pale horse. In the 9th verse, I saw and opened the 5th seal, and that's getting us into the we had in the Protestant age under the altar souls that were slain for the word of God and a testimony that they had during the persecution. And this was tribulation time of the Roman Catholic and also the Protestant. And they cried a loud voice, saying, "How long, O Lord, holy and true, dost not judge or avenge us of the blood of those that dwell on the earth? On them that dwell on the earth." Now, of course, that was the religious persecutors. White robes were given to every one of them. In other words, God, Amen, gave them the sanctification symbol, and it was said unto them that they should rest yet a while, till their fellow servants and their brethren that should be killed as they were should be fulfilled on through the rest of the Protestant age. And when he had opened the 6th seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake. Well, that's another sign he's told us to watch for. At the close of time, his coming was earthquakes, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair. This was referring to and pertaining to the Protestant brethren. They lost the light they had because they refused to walk in light, and their lights went out. And when we deal with the prophecies of the New Testament, then those brothers, the sun is still black as sackcloth of hair because they miss it altogether. They're writing long books and arguing about things that have nothing to do with truth. They just can't understand the spiritual city. They don't see the spiritual city. They don't understand the spiritual kingdom. They've missed it altogether. They're waiting for a kingdom. They're looking for a kingdom earnestly, and they've been to seminary, and some have their masters of divinities degrees, still looking for a city they can't see what you see. They don't know that there's already a spiritual city, the kingdom already up, they're ready to deliver it up. It already came down way back. John saw it coming down a long time ago. All right, Sister Angie. Was that you? Oh, Robin?
What do you think about, how they're talking about the world system?
About what?
They're talking about a one world system.
Yeah.
They have articles in
Well, it has to do.
the money that, money's not going to get.
Yeah.
That could really happen, but does that have nothing to do?
No, it's not going to happen because what they're doing, they're getting it out of the Scripture, and the Scripture don't teach that.
Well, no, I mean that how some things are leaning towards that. You've got,
No, it ain't going to happen. I don't think so. No.
I'm not saying these,
It ain't going to happen even naturally.
the world is concerned.
No, not even naturally, because it takes cooperation. It takes cooperation. And folks are always fighting and warring. Look over at Bosnia. Who ever thought that Yugoslavia and different places like it would bust up and fight and kill one another, and they've been together for years? How are we going to do that? You know what Quebec's trying to do? Quebec, a province or a state in Canada, they want to secede. Now, the wars and rumors of wars. They're willing to fight for their liberty so they can be French. Now, there's always something in a man's heart that's never satisfied. One world government would have to be forced, and the communists tried to force it, and they couldn't. They tried to make it into one world government. So the only one going to come under is this fellow Antichrist. He's the only one who's going to have enough charm and power to make them do it. Now he's going to do it, and he's going to bring one world government, and then he's going to fool them and turn his head on the back and turn his turn against them and deceive them and betray them. Now, he's the only one that got enough power to the Antichrist. And I'm going to tell you, Antichrist is not a matter of unity, no how. It's a matter of division. No, I don't see it happen. They're trying to do it in Europe, and they won't even, while they sit down reasonably and agree to do it, still can't do it. England don't want to be in it. France don't want England in it. Belgium don't want in it. Can't even get the United Nations. Can't even get the North Atlantic Treaty Organization working just right. There's nothing to put together that stayed really unified. Closest to it was the United Nations. And they can't agree there because nobody won't get no money to support it. I don't see it. I don't think we have enough time to go through all that because the Lord will be coming here for that. Set up his kingdom's already been set up. And that comes from foolishness. God couldn't even unify the church. You guys couldn't unify the church until he sanctified the brother. They couldn't unify them. They justified their fault and divided. You know that. That's where they poured the vials out on the river, and it became bitter. And the process began to war among themselves, and they were supposed to have been saved, governed by the word. And even after they got sanctified, you know, they got justified and got saved, and then they got sanctified. They had to get sanctified before the Lord could bring them to a unity. See? So unity comes at the barrel of a gun, is what he said. Now you get unity with the barrel of a gun, that's not real unity, is it? Tito had Yugoslavia together pretty good until he died. And then they let you know what they want. They didn't want to be together. They didn't want to be together, so they're fighting it out and almost relentlessly murdering one another. And it almost come to murder when you start killing the children and the women who pose no threat to you, just to get rid of them. So we would never have to fight you all again. That's what the Germans did to the Jews, exterminate them. And so that's a very, very vicious battle that they're fighting over there, and that's, of course, the devil's loose over there. And we haven't suffered that in this nation, but we probably will if time tarries, because we don't have the godly principles to govern us. We had truth and right on our side during World War II, but next time we may not be so fortunate. May not be so fortunate. I beheld when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake. That's me talking, but I'm dealing with principles. I'm not dealing with my wisdom. I'm dealing with the principles of the Scripture and of past experiences. That it takes some humility and submission to be unified. Everybody don't want the same thing. And what you think is right, that's why we have a Republicans Party, and that's why we have a Democratic Party, because everybody don't want the same thing. And then we come to find out that some people don't want either one of them. They want an independent party, start a third party. And that ain't enough. If they split down where everybody can be satisfied, we'd have 99 different parties. That's why we have so many churches. Everybody's not satisfied with the church they're in. So they can't work in the unity, and so we have start another one. And there's people starting new ones every day, just about. The Episcopals and the Seventh-day Adventists and the Metaphysics and the Jehovah's Witnesses and you name it. Church of God and Church of God in Christ and the Church of Christ, and then people there's just not agreed. We got one book and still can't agree. How in the world are we going to have one world? A unified government. All them different, well, they'd be stabbing one another in the back. Even the Russians had to watch each other to keep them killing each other, even when they was at their best. Sister Betty? Yeah. It would be an unfit church. All right, we're going to read this because we're going to line up all those mysterious scriptures from the Old and New Testament with the truth of the sixth seal. I beheld when they opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. Now this actually took place, but not literally. In other words, this is sealed, and Christ had to open the seal, but it was sealed. It was open for John in that time, but one at a time, but it's not open to every mind. Lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood, and the stars of heaven. The ministers who were standing under Protestantism and brought the saint into justification fell, because they didn't go on into the one church which was brought about by the message of sanctification. So they lost the light that they had, became irrelevant to what God was trying to do. They just went in darkness. Stars of heaven fell unto an earthly position because they were preaching out of their own mind after God forsook them, because they would not take the current message. Even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs. When it was time for those brethren to get together with the other brethren, it was untimely for them to fall, because light was coming and they should have unified. But they didn't. But when a mighty wind blow and shake the figs off before they get ripe, now, that's heaven departed as a scroll, or their heavenly position will roll up, as they say, God rolled his truth. Now the scroll is the truth, it's the word, it's the Bible. The scroll, when it is rolled together, their eyes, spiritual eyes, could not discern the word in it. In every mountain, and we realize this worship place, church and islands, and those in the independent groups, were moved out of their places because of the power and the force of the unified brethren. And the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, and the chief captains, the mighty men, and every bondman, and every free man, they hid themselves in the dens and the rocks and the mountains, and said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us, hide us from the face of him. Who was presenting the face of him upon the throne? The anointed preaching of the 6 brethren. And they didn't want to hear it, because they wasn't willing to change. So they cried to their favorite sex, hide us from the face of him that sat on the throne. So they went up and joined their own church and hid out. And folks are still doing that. I've seen the sinners, you get them under conviction and they go and join church somewhere to hide, because they've seen the face of Christ in your testimony, and they go join somebody else's church to hide out so they won't have to look at. Because the Bible says the face of the Lord is against them to do evil, and so they want to look there. They want to keep on doing what they want to do. And the wrath of the Lamb, for the great day of his wrath has come. Who shall be able to stand? Maybe we covered often enough that we'll do a little bit better with it. We've been assuming some things, sometimes we should probably should assuming. All right, Sister Joan. Right. That's the one. Yeah, that's the one. And then that's what happened to the Protestant brethren. They wouldn't want to walk in the light. God removed it. That's the principle by which we know this is what he's talking about. Walk while you have light. And other scriptures too, similar to that one, let us know that if you don't accept the truth, God take the truth from you, and you go in darkness. Right? Let's stand. It'd be good if you go over these scriptures some more, since you wrote them down. It'd be good if you go home and look them over. You see, if you don't develop some curiosity, you're not going to learn anything, not much. If you're not interested and curious, and that's one thing that really helps you take hold of the truth, when you're interested. You know you don't know, and you know what you don't know, but you don't know what it is. And so that curiosity will have you search it. Then the Bible said, blessed is he. The Bible said, blessed is he that hunger and thirst after righteousness. You're hungering and thirsting after truth, then of course you're more interested in getting it. So your curiosity and your interest in the subject, did it cause you to dig, will cause it to come to you. And when you're looking for reading your Bible and you run across something you don't know, it rings a bell when someone brings a message on it. It rings a bell. You got it now. All right, what's our number? Develop curiosity for the Word and interest in it.
Page 6.
And you can be like a sponge. All right. that for you? Was there a draft going in there? Mm-hmm. What's in those one again? Hi, boys. Hi, boys. $73 degrees. I'm going to try to get the bell and put a heater out there, though. It needs it. It's cold out there down in the basement. And it goes in there, too. I think we can get some heat installed. Oh, yeah, someday. Any announcements before we go? All right, everything is well. Continue to remember Sister Ruth as she suffered in the body with that particular arthritis. Believe the Lord can rebuke it and take it off of her. Amen. Don't have to go no further. So let's continue. Remember those. The Bible said those that suffer like that. Let's pray as though we're in bondage with them. Those who are in bondage. Let's pray as though we be there with them. And others that do have the standing request before the Lord, Brother Roger, yet we ain't forgetting him, praying for me every morning, just about. Lord, help him get him to work, praise the Lord. And Lord, helping him. You're not forgetting him. And we don't want to forget one another, praise the Lord. God has given some victories, and let us be counted among some of those he's given. All right. Sister Wanda. Well, you have to get your rest, dear. Get you some rest. Even under stress and strain, you have to get your rest. That's right. Just lay some things aside and shut the door. You know, we're not super. All right. If nothing further, then we're going to... All right. Who's that back there? Brother Keith? All right. Nothing further. Prison tomorrow. Don't forget those that are concerning the prison. All right. Brother. All right, it's time we can dismiss. Praise the Lord. As we bow our heads, someone dismiss us.